Welcome to Shop Talk Live, Fine Woodworking Magazine's bi-weekly podcast. I'm your host, Ben Strano, and with me this episode is Matt Kenny.
Hello, everyone.
And Anissa Capsalis.
Hi.
And as always, Jeff Rose behind the camera. Matt
Hello.
Ooh.
Hey, Jeff.
Jeff
Hey.
commandeered the microphone.
I did.
Nice. I don't think we have any announcements or anything, so let's just get straight into the woodworking. First question is from Graham. Given that you have full-time jobs at the magazine and you no doubt have family life stuff to deal with as well, do you have any routines or rules that you live by with the aim of preventing mistakes when you get shop time?
That's a good question.
I like this because it dispels the myth that we woodwork all day long.
Right. You don't?
No.
Yeah, shop time is hard to come by. But I do actually have something that I do when I go into the shop, because most of my shop time comes on weeknights after the kids are in bed, or now it would be after the kids are in bed, or on the weekends. And what I try to do is, so if it's after work, after the kids are in bed, I might have 2 hours in the shop, maybe 3 hours. And so I try to move whatever I'm making. What?
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. That's a fair amount.
Yeah, that's no good. Good for you.
Yeah, I mean, I try to. Sometimes it doesn't work out. I try to get a couple hours in. So what I do is think, okay, well, so I'm making this small cabinet or something. What can I accomplish in 2 hours, let's say? And I want it to be something that begins and ends and is completely done when I walk out of the shop. So whether that's cutting joinery or prepping surfaces for a finish or gluing up something, I want it to be a discrete step in the construction that I can begin and complete in that process. And I do that because if you walk away in the middle of a task, let's say you're cutting tails for drawers on the drawer sides. If you walk away in the middle of that, if you're cutting them by hand, you don't, that's one thing. But let's say you're cutting them on the table saw or at the bandsaw. You got to leave that machine set up that way. Mm-hmm. And then what happens if you need it for something else in the meantime before you can get back in there? You're going to have to change it, and then, problems like that arise. But also because when you don't have to worry about remembering where you left off when you come back in. For me. Yeah. You don't have to worry about, well, what was I doing there? It's done. And you can break it down. So even if you can't let's say you only get an hour, okay, so all you do tonight was cut the tails, and then the next time you go in, you transfer and cut the pins. But at least those are discrete activities that can be broken down and accomplished at one time. So that's normally how I go about working in the shop because of how fractured my time is there. And it's even the same when I get time on the weekends or if I take a day off from work to be in the shop. I try to end the day by completing something so that when I go back in again, I don't have to pick up in the middle and try to finish. Mm-hmm. That's normally how I work. So
I'd buy that.
Yeah, I could buy that too. That's a good policy. It's just doesn't feel realistic to me. Here I am, right here, next to this microphone.
Why doesn't that seem realistic to you?
Calling it fractured, your time is so fractured is so what I'm dealing with. I don't like to dabble in the shop. I don't like to go in for half an hour and try and clean up a little bit so I could do something and then get pulled away by this or that. So I'm less likely to go in for little bits of time and wait until I can get 4 or 5 hours, because otherwise I'm just cleaning up from the last time, trying, like what Matt said, trying to get back into what I was doing before. So I try and have a list when I go in. I try not to be rushed and not tired and just really present in the shop. It's harder for me to be present doing something if I'm only in there for an hour because there's always something. I have to do this. I have to get this done too, and pulling me in different directions.
Does that apply for working on a project or in general? Because I could see that rule for, I'm not going to work on this cabinet until I have 4 hours of time to do it. But that 1 hour that you might be able to squeak in after the kids go to bed or whatever, you could, organize something, or do you just not set foot in the shop at all?
It's very frustrating to me to set foot in the shop for a half an hour or 45 minutes and have to scramble to get cleaned up or something beforehand. I'm just not that organized, and I need to get organized. So I'm actually not giving Graham any helpful tips, except I'd rather have larger chunks of time where...
That's your tip, Graham. Find more time to be in the shop.
It's just hard to go in and out because, I'll end up doing a lot of stuff for the house where it's a frenzy. I'm like, I have an hour. I can get this done. I can make those kayak racks today. And I just did that on Sunday, and I realized that that's not a big woodworking project, but that was over the span of about 7 hours getting interrupted about 500 times. So it's just more frustrating to do that.
Yeah.
So I'd rather just have the chunk of time. And, when I start, I have a couple articles coming up. When I start doing those projects, I'm going to really have to be disciplined and set aside that time and follow Matt's protocol probably, where I'm getting specific tasks done.
I think it is, how I think is I'm very linear, and I get focused on one thing and I do it. So it works for me because when I'm building something, it's like, there probably should be distractions for me, but I just kind of say, screw it. I don't care about that now. So it's like, yeah, there's dirty dishes that need to be cleaned. But I'd rather go in the shop. And, so I get what you're saying about all the distractions, because there are tons of them in life, but, I guess that's the way that I am, is that I just ignore that stuff until I accomplish what it is I want to accomplish. And then, so I prioritize stuff. It's like, okay, the first thing I want to do tonight is go in the shop. And then the next thing I'm going to do is do the checkbook. And then the next thing I'm going to do is the dishes, down the line. And if I don't get to all of them, I just don't get to all of them. But, life's no fun I don't want to get old and die and thinking, well, I wish I'd spent more time in the shop.
I don't want to get old and die and think that either. But I also have to weigh, I locked my kids out of the shop and I could see my son banging his sister over the head with something. Maybe I should be distracted by that.
Maybe that would move up on the list there.
I lock them out and they claw at the door.
You got little fingers coming under the door.
You just got to get
through
like
the cat door.
Yeah, cat door, just so they could put their heads in.
Yeah.
And you could talk to them. Yeah.
And just so you can see that they're okay. But
yeah.
For me, it's been I've stopped trying to finish things, and I would always rush to get to the finish line. And instead of saying, okay, I have an hour in the shop, a reasonable amount of work to do in that is this task and this task. Instead, I would just try and get as close to the finish line as I possibly could. And as I got closer to finishing all of those projects, I'd become more and more likely to make a big mistake that I couldn't fix or something like that. So it's easier now because I get more shop time. I go to the shop every weekday morning, and I get a couple of nights a week after the kid goes to sleep. So it's a lot easier for me to put off finishing a project and say, well, I'll probably have that done in 2 weeks. And if I don't, it'll be done the week after. Whereas before I came to work here, it was like, I would maybe get an hour of shop time a week.
Oh, you have more shop time now.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's when you work for a woodworking magazine, it's easier to prioritize woodworking as something, and I was a stay-at-home dad, and my wife worked late, and, if I went down to the shop after Roz went to sleep, I'd wake him up. It was really, really difficult. So the only time that I got shop time back then was when my parents would come to visit and they'd watch my kid, and I would just live in the shop for a week. But now, if I don't try and get to the finish line sooner than I probably should, I'm more likely to have everything go as planned. So
yeah, I mean that's the nice thing about furniture is that constructing a piece of furniture is something that can be broken down into discrete steps. You know, first I must do this, then I must do that, then I do this. So if you think about that ahead of time and you think about, okay, here are all the steps I have to take to complete this piece of furniture, and then you can, when you go into the shop, you can, like I said, you can just break them, accomplish one thing at a time. And by doing that day after day after day, you get done. What in the Lord was that?
that was Anissa's phone.
God.
Here we go with the priorities problem.
Evidently, her son is beating her daughter over the head with a stick.
All right. Let's move on to the next question. This was a kind of an interesting one. It almost became a segment, but I'm new to woodworking. This one's from Devin. I'm new to woodworking and I love Shaker furniture, but I am starving for more influence. I know I can just look at furniture, but I feel I'd get more from a body of work by folks that really know their stuff. What are 3 makers that influence you?
Or who are 3 makers that influence you, rather?
Well, it could be...
have to do a little bit of editing.
It could be,
one day.
Martian makers.
I'm done, though. That's all the editing I'm due today.
All right.
All right.
More than normal for you.
Yep.
Okay. Anissa?
Ben?
Yeah?
Hi.
3 makers that influence you.
Oh, you left out his caveat, which was that they should all be distinctly different from one another.
And we said that we were going to do that.
Yeah.
Well, good, because mine are all very similar.
Okay.
Do you have any photos up there?
Yeah. These are the photos that you sent me, and they were all teeny tiny, so I made a collage.
They're teeny tiny.
Look at that.
That's Walker Weed.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's Walker Weed. Sweet. I love that rounded hanging chair.
Is that what that is, a chair?
Mm-hmm.
So Walker Weed was who?
Walker Weed. He was a furniture maker I met at the Furniture Society in 2008 when he received his Award of Distinction. And he was making furniture in the 60s, 70s, teaching at Dartmouth, 70s, 80s. And he was in his 90s when I met him, I think, or late 80s. And his body of work is just so beautiful. It's so unassuming and...
Yeah, it's a nice credenza.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Really
I love
nice.
that chair.
Mm-hmm.
But does he have a website that people can go to?
He does not have a website. And he passed away a few years ago.
So this is Anissa's secret influence.
It's
You
going to
cannot
remain secretive.
You can certainly Google his name,
Okay.
Walker Weed, and a lot of images will pop up. He emailed this to me around 2008, and the wood pile is not on the screen. This is what he was currently working on at the time. So he had just finished stacking that wood, and I met him at the Furniture Society conference, and he was
90 when
about
and he stacked
90.
that pile of wood.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it is.
Is this him?
Yes.
Okay.
And what a nice, generous man with his knowledge.
Okay. So number 2.
Who else do you have? Oh, Warren Esherick. Also very...
Do you want me to put it up on the screen? All right.
Sure. That's the Warren Esherick house. That's open. Everybody probably knows the Warren Esherick Museum, but if you don't, you should go there. This is the house he lived in and furnished. All his furniture is in there. Those steps are his. I'm really attracted to symmetry.
Okay.
And a lot of his stuff is asymmetrical, and it's still really, it's understated, but there's nothing simple about anything that any of these people that I'm putting up there have done.
And number 3 for you?
Number 3 is, now, he's a Danish furniture maker.
Peter
Moose.
Okay.
But if I were Danish, I'd probably be pronouncing the D as a TH and maybe Moss. Actually, I know this because I was talking with my Danish friend this morning at the bus stop, and she told me how to pronounce it, but I can't do it. So
It's
Peter Moose.
Pather?
TH as in the.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we won't even try it.
So-
Peter Moss.
Peter Moss.
Yeah, but with the Scandinavian kind of lilt to it. You want to try it, Matt?
I think Pather Moss is probably the best I can do.
So you had you sent me an auction house site,
Yeah, you can click on some of those.
and we'll post a link
Yeah.
to that.
I mean, he has that. Everything is so delicate and seemingly simple, but again, understated, not simple to create, and just a nice carving here or there. I first heard about him in a cabinet maker's notebook. James Krenev had a little tale about him. You could even see that one. Has that.
We don't know because it's there. Oh, look, it's sliding in.
Yeah, he has that drumstick leg is something that he does a lot, and then he has that carving that goes around the center. And it's just a simple form, but a really beautiful table, unassuming.
Yeah, it's nice.
There are a bunch of nice ones on there. But he influenced James Krenev, and Krenev wrote about him. And the crazy thing is, I don't know if it's on that. There was another site where I'll give you the link to put up. He liked to sleep outside, so it was kind of the first kitchen drawer slide apparatus, because he built a bed that slid out his window and he could sleep outside.
That's awesome. So it could go inside or outside.
Yes. He could shoot it right out the window and sleep outside under the stars.
That's pretty fantastic.
I will give you the link so you
All
can
right.
see an image
Definitely
of that
need to see
guy sleeping outside in his bed.
All right. Dr. Kenny, who are your top three?
So top three for me.
Which you made my top three very difficult because you had two that I would probably put in mine as well.
Really?
Yeah.
So I don't remember what three so I'm just going to pick three now. No, I think I picked one of them was Garrett Hack.
Yep.
And I like Garrett's work, which everyone that reads the magazine is familiar with, because it's so unbelievably delicate and it has beautiful proportions, and it's just, I mean, it's beautiful. Garrett's work is gorgeous, but I really admire his ability to make things that look delicate and light, but they're also very strong and sturdy. So that's what I really like about Garrett's work. And there's also something very compelling about the way he, not so much anymore, but when he was first, starting out 10, 15, 20 years ago when he was in the magazine, he did really nice sort of a combination of Federal and shaker, which around the office we normally refer to as shed roll. But it's really nice.
A little inside baseball for you.
Yeah, it's elegant and it's attractive. And it's also, there's a way in which it's very simple, but also in a way it's very elevated. So it's just sort of like it's like if you were to put a shaker in a tuxedo, sort of, it's sort of what you get. So I really like, that's what I really like about Garrett's work. And then another person that has been important to me, which might be a little surprising, is Frank Lloyd Wright. And I do not make arts and crafts or prairie furniture or anything like that. I never will. I just don't. I don't really like it. But what I do really like about Frank Lloyd Wright and his work was, and again, this may not even really qualify because I'm probably not even thinking about it as furniture, but his use of primary colors and color in his design was always very inspirational to me. For example, I've talked about the glass windows from the Coonley Playhouse, which I saw one in person. I went earlier, like a month ago. I went to the city. I took my kids to the city, and we went to MoMA. And just because I thought my daughter is a budding artist, and so I wanted to take her to see some artwork. And there was this great Frank Lloyd Wright exhibit, and they had one of those windows hanging. And I didn't even know, but I was there. So, of course, I took a picture of it. It was gorgeous. But also, like, the serving dishes and stuff, the plates and everything that he designed for the Imperial Hotel in Tokyo are fantastic. You know, they have these wonderful circles of color on them. I saw that very early on when I started to get into woodworking, and it clearly has influenced me because it was seeing his use of color I wanted to use color in my work, and that's how I ended up with milk paint and fabric and all the stuff that I make now. Frank Lloyd Wright, even though I really don't find his furniture very attractive, I really admire his use of color in some of his work. And then the third person who I like, and this guy is a furniture maker, and I do like his furniture, is Judson Beaumont of Vancouver, British Columbia. He does work that is Judson is a fantastic artist and very creative and very unique in his vision of how he sees things and what he designs. And some of his furniture is very playful, like cabinets that appear to have exploded apart, and each part contains a drawer. And all of his furniture that he makes is functional. So even though it's very playful, it's all usable, which is admirable.
Which is rare too. Sometimes,
right?
You know, in the studio furniture world, it's not functional.
It's not functional. Yeah. But he has a really cool dresser called the Little Black Dresser, which is shaped like a black evening dress, and it hangs on your wall, but it's a dresser that's usable. But he also does a lot of other amazing work. Like he took a lot of pine. They had a problem in Canada where pine was being invaded by this beetle that turned the wood like with this purplish blue streaks. And he took that stuff, which he could find at the box store for really cheap and which most people didn't want, and he had a way of turning it into river stones. So he would have all these different like river stones that were really just like a river stone is soft and smooth and in a way polished. And he would take those and he would do installations where that might be the receiving desk at like at a local government office. And so there's this huge receiving desk with this beautiful, amazing sort of pine river stones all over the surface. And he also would take this wood and just split it with an axe. And there'd be a jointed surface, and that would go on the wall, for example. But all these curved rough surfaces would be facing out. And so you'd have this amazing textured wall. And that might be, I know in one place he used that behind the receiving desk. So Judson is very creative, which I like about him. It's a very unique vision. And he does an amazing job executing it. And his work is playful, which I like. But also it's very functional. He's just an amazing furniture maker. Just everything he does is so amazing. And I think what I really like about him is like he makes some stuff which is really kind of wacky in a way. And it's, would I make my own house and make furniture in that way? Well, no, because I'm not Judd. I don't see things that way. But what I admire about his work is that he has never been afraid to simply do what he wanted to do. Because he does it, most of the furniture he makes, the straight up furniture, it's not even made using traditional techniques. He wrote an article for us, which I edited and photographed many years ago, showing how he makes a lot of these very curvaceous chests of drawers that he makes. And it's not even traditional techniques, but he doesn't care. He has a vision of what he wants to make, and then he figured out ways to make it. And so I admire that about him as well, that he's not confined to traditional techniques for furniture making or traditional styles for furniture making. So, I find that inspirational about his work.
Cool.
Yeah.
For me, I picked. I'm not going to help Devin all that much because my first choice was Christian Becksford, and if Devin's into shaker furniture, there you go.
He knows Chris.
But one thing that I do love is Christian's pieces that he's less known for, his non-shaker furniture, like this shelf that he put up here. This has been on his website. We got to get him to do an article on it.
I've tried about 32 times,
but
he's not having it.
You know, it's obviously shaker inspired kind of. It's got that utilitarian nature, simple design, but everything that he does, non-shaker pieces, they all have like a little tweak to them. That it might be a curve or a textured surface that you would never see in shaker furniture, or it might just be a leg just cut at a little bit of an angle, or he's got a lot of very, very delicate wall hanging pieces that I love, candelabras, things like that. So you check out Christian's website. My second one has got to be Andrew Hunter, and I love how Andrew has two totally different sides, where he's got like this country furniture side, everything's nailed, and it's just dados and nails, and just beautiful pieces, all hand done, no finish on them. So like his country cupboard or country hutch, I think it's called, one of my all-time favorite pieces of all time. But then he goes into a lot of ancient Chinese style furniture, where it's like these crazy joinery, three-way miters and all sorts of hidden dovetail things that just make this piece that is not, there's no glue holding anything together, totally disassemblable, if that's a word, and delicate looking, and just as fine and precise as you'll ever see. So I just love how he's not afraid to go to either extreme.
Right. The Chinese stuff that he makes is like aesthetically and technically perfect.
Yeah.
But I like his country stuff better.
Yeah.
I do. It's the hutch in the blanket chest that he did for us. Those things there's something about them that they are very simple. And there's a bit of a rustic edge to them, but it's not too bad. It's not like Naughty Pine gone wild.
But normally, if somebody has the skills and the desire to make something as intricate as that Chinese armoire, they're not going to be the same person to make that country hutch.
Probably not. Yeah,
and I love that he's willing to say, this is beautiful and this is beautiful. And
sorry, this one,
the middle one. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Do you have another photo of that?
I don't.
Inside, it's surprisingly, it's a combination of what we're talking about. It's milk painted inside. So when you open those doors, unless it's a different piece that I'm thinking of, there's mustard milk paint inside. And it's kind of mixing those two styles, where you have this really refined ancient Chinese, this piece with ancient joinery, and then the more countryside inside. I'm starting to think I'm a little bit country, I'm a little bit rock and roll. That's all. But I mean, just that he could mix those two things so perfectly in one piece is pretty impressive to me.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the good about the country stuff is that although it's country, it's got a very modern touch to it, a refinement to it.
Timeless.
Yeah, that makes it very nice.
My third would definitely be Michael Cullen. The way that he uses carved textures is something that I'd never seen before. We went out to shoot that video with him, and it just, these seemingly simple designs that all of a sudden have this whimsical, playful thing that just jumps out. And again, totally functional. Totally I love his Banson boxes, but his furniture too is just, the man's willing to try anything, especially when it comes to carving, all these different patterns that he uses. And it just, I love his furniture. More sculptural than I am generally drawn towards, but I think Michael Collins got to be in my top 3. So
Yeah.
there we go.
The thing about all of these people that were mentioned is that they all have mature, well-developed aesthetics. You know, they each have a way of seeing furniture or designing furniture that's uniquely their own. You know, even though that you can see influences in them, but that's the thing is that so look for people who have, when you look at their body of work, there's a type of unity to it that doesn't have to mean they all look the same, but there's something tying it all together. Like for Michael Cullen, it's the carving, the texturing, and milk paint. You know, even though some of his stuff looks very disparate, it's all held together in some way. And the same would be for, Andrew. There's something tying together all of his work, even the stuff that's as disparate as the Chinese versus the country. There's elements there that are tying it together. So,
Right on. Well, shall we move on to all-time favorite article of all time?
sure.
Who wants to start?
Why don't you start? We're taking turns.
Good idea.
I will start, and I'm going off the deep end because I didn't do an article. I did.
I hope we didn't do the same thing.
No.
How do you know?
Because I'm the web guy, so I did a video series.
Is it a video series?
I did Garrett Hack's Build a Small Tool Cabinet video workshop. And I think I had maybe been into woodworking for maybe a year. And I was on the website, and I just started watching everything I could watch. And this was the first time that I had witnessed somebody make perfection. And it was on video, and I'm sure the piece isn't perfect or whatever, but it was presented as such.
How dare you say that? How dare you, sir? I am going to call Garrett as soon as we're done. He will never talk to you again.
But there is, we don't talk much anyways.
Oh, okay. Wow.
There is a moment of video, and I'll try and dig it out and give it to Jeff, and so we can post it at the end of this. A moment of video where he's fitting the door, gets it perfectly fit, cabinet's laying on its back, and he drops the door, and it does that perfect landing on a pillow of air, perfect fit. That's what every woodworker dreams of. And the grin on his face is just, and my wife came home from work, and I made her watch that 20-second clip 5 times, and all 5 times she was like, yeah. But it was like, that was when I witnessed how, like, you know, this is one of the great furniture makers of our time, and he still got so much joy out of that moment of just like, yep, nailed it.
There's the other video where he did the little splay leg table with the spinning drawer, and then he closes the drawer and he goes, spinner, or something like that. Yeah.
It just, you know, it's furniture making is a serious thing, but it could be fun, you know.
Yeah.
Especially at that level, you would think that these guys aren't having fun anymore, but I think there's still a lot
Garrett
of enjoyment.
always has fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my all-time favorite video article, whatever, of all time. So
Anissa, you go next.
Okay. Anything by John Arno.
Oh yeah, of course.
So there are about 700 of them, but he writes so eloquently about all different kinds of wood. It's romantic, it's funny, it's scientific. Anything. Poplar, the ashes, the oaks,
cherry,
anything. If you do a search on our website for John Arno,
yeah,
you'll just
he had a great combination of
no H
of understanding the scientific side of wood, but also having built furniture.
So what like did he write articles about?
Like cherry, he'd write an article about cherry.
Just about wood.
Yeah, it would be about the wood cherry, about its workability, about its characteristics, about its finishing.
Really?
Yeah, we haven't been able to find anyone like that to do it in his stead.
I love the titles. Catalpa.
Yeah.
Sassafras.
Sassafras.
the mighty oaks.
Yeah. So yeah, his articles are fantastic.
They're just
yeah.
There's a good one on poplar for you.
Oh, I love poplar.
I know. It's actually in this issue, number 41. Look at that
Number
cover.
41, yeah.
That's
Look at
pretty
that guy's
incredible.
That is the most dangerous cover, I think. Well, no,
Oh, they're
we've had others.
plaid.
Yeah.
He's going golfing after he turns that giant
There's two
turning.
things I noticed immediately was the guy's wearing plaid pants and he has them pulled up mid-chest.
Matt.
He's got the old man pant line.
So check that out. Issue 41.
Issue
Poplar.
41. All right, remember that. Issue
All right.
41 poplar. Does he speak really? I don't know if I've read the poplar one, but I will look at it.
All right, so I will post his author page as well as issue 41, Poplar.
And there's actually a really beautiful one of our readers from the Knots forum and posted a really beautiful obituary for him. So that would be really nice to post too.
Yeah.
I think.
Okay.
Yeah, he's one of like the big pillars in the history of fine woodworking because his articles that just no one else can do that what he did, or so we haven't found anyone yet. Maybe Chris Bexford probably could about some of the woods.
Get on it.
Yeah, talk to him about that. All right, my all-time favorite article of all time for this week last year was I picked actually an article that Anissa edited. Didn't you edit this article?
I did.
Yes, this is
That was a good one.
Designing with Grain by who wrote it? I don't
Jason Roberts.
Jason Roberts. And what I like about this article, it's so basically what happens in this article is they show where he starts with a boule or a whole log, and it explains where he gets the grain from for each part of the piece that he's made. And so it's not really what I like about this article is this is sort of where these are the things that I find most interesting in designing and making furniture. It's not cutting dovetails or cutting mortise and tenon joints. It's about confronting a type of a material, wood, and doing your best with that material to make something beautiful. And that means things like accounting for color and grain orientation, and the amount of attention that you have to give to each piece of a cabinet or a credenza or a sideboard. So you give all this attention to these individual pieces, and the whole reason you do that is so that when it comes together, no one else notices these individual pieces, you know? It's so that you see this, a completed whole, a unity, a harmonious balance that is striking and attractive and compelling. And so this article talks about one of the things you have to think about, which is grain and how you use grain on a piece of furniture so that all the pieces look right and fit together harmoniously and peacefully. And
the thing that strikes me about it is when I look at this piece for the listeners, there's four doors, and each one has a big cathedral grain in the middle of each.
Yes.
And I think, okay, designing with grain, that's what he's talking about.
yes.
That's really not what he's talking about.
No.
He's talking about the subtleties of using grain in the legs, and we'll post a picture. There's grain in the leg, and that's also
the leg has a foot that curves out slightly as it leaves the bottom of the cabinet. And so he's picked grain that also slowly curves out like the foot does the bottom of the leg. And so that's what you're talking about here with designing with grain, because
but it also matches the frame of the door next to it.
Yes.
You know, and it's just it's subtle things like that you would never notice until the 100th look at a piece of furniture in person.
Right, because a lot of times I see stuff that's been made by I'll meet someone at a show or whatever, and they'll show me, here, I made this. And there's nothing inherently like wrong with the design. Like, that's a nice piece, got nice proportions, but then you look at it closely and you see, oh, well, they use stock for their legs that's flat sawn on one side and rift sawn on the other side, and they have this thing that curves like this, but there's cathedral grain that curves in the opposite direction, and so it honestly, it detracts from the piece's appeal to have all that tension created by the grain.
But I mean, that without somebody pointing things out like this to you,
Right.
you would never know. And that's one of those subtle things that what makes these pieces so well done is these subtle things that they catch. So this is a fantastic article if you really want to up your game as a furniture maker.
There was, and it's not surprising that when I recently did an article called "How Pros Look at Wood" or something like that, and I talked to like 15, 20 different people, and they all basically told me the same thing. They were describing this in some fashion, that when I go to buy lumber, what I'm looking for is wood that I can take, cut up into pieces so that the grain and the color of these pieces all come together in a harmonious way that's appealing. And that's what they think about. And that's what Jason is talking about here, that when he's picking lumber, that's what he's thinking about. And you don't really think about board feet. You don't think about the cost, I mean, cost is a limiting factor for everybody, but it's
nice if you don't have to really worry about cost. Yeah.
But, be willing to spend an extra $100 or $200 to make something that will really shine in your house for the rest of your life, and then, into the life of your children or grandchildren. So as opposed to making something they just want to chuck, But, anyways, I like that article. That's a great article.
Cool.
With that one, you both mentioned how you don't really notice it just from first glance. If it were wrong, you would notice it instantly.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
If the grain on those drawers wasn't running across the piece, was interrupted somehow, you would definitely notice it. It's that cliche or that saying about you don't notice good design.
Right.
And that everything else is harmonious allows him to use those pretty fancy the grain on those doors.
Right.
If he had the grain running all over the place, those doors would not be as subtle as they are.
Yeah.
It's just a smooth
That's one
execution.
of the things that I do when I design is that I minimize the use of wild or loud or fantastic figure and grain, because if you do it too much, it becomes overwhelming. And so the way it works for this credenza, our sideboard, is that everything is quarter sawn, riff sawn grain except for those door panels. And that's, as Anissa said, that's why they can be that spectacular, because everything else is quiet.
So you try and be Miles Davis.
I do. I try to be Miles Davis. I'm not quite sure what that means, but from what I know about Miles
Too many
Davis,
Weedleys, man. Too many Weedleys and nothing matters.
Weed leaves?
You got to save the Weedleys for the Weedly.
Oh, I thought you said weed leaves.
And cue the emails.
One last thing about this piece
that.
is that I think this was Edward Barnsley inspired. He's another great person to look at for design inspiration. Edward Barnsley.
Definitely.
That's like original arts and crafts movement, right?
The beginning of it maybe.
Okay.
But his work is definitely not green arts and crafts.
Yeah.
It's very different than that. Yeah.
All right. So I think we beat that one. Let's move on to question number 3. How would this one's from
we're
Tyler?
already like 45 minutes into this podcast.
All right. How would gluing up 4 3/4 sheets of MDF work as a bench top? I'm trying to get a bench built quickly so that I can continue working on projects until I have a larger shop and time to build a nicer bench.
Fine. It works fine.
MDF workbench. Fine.
Yep.
That's it. That's all you have to say.
That's all I'm going to say. It would work fine. It absolutely will.
Yeah. It's heavy.
It'll be heavy, especially because in order to get it to really stay together, you're going to glue it and then screw it. And when you have, 5 pounds
of drywall screws and 3/4 of a gallon of
glue. Yeah, it's going to be strong. It'll be fine. I would just make sure that on the underside, you provide adequate support to it. So, you're going to have some aprons underneath it on the front and the back. And I would just, in between those, I would run something that's taller than it is thick, so it's kind of like an I-beam structure, and just run a lot of slats or support underneath that to keep it flat so it doesn't start to sag or anything. That's what I would
Glued
do.
and screwed, do you think it would sag at all, ever?
Yeah.
MDF.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it would. I think so.
I would also say if you're going to put holes for bench dogs that you size them with CA glue or epoxy. But I would also say check out Josh Finn's bench.
Yeah.
Which I was reading this article last night. This bench is so versatile, so inexpensive, so easy to break down and push to the other side of your shop. If you're starting, I would try this bench. The Homosote on top, on one side of those beams, and then there's melamine on the other side for glue ups.
So it's basically two large horses, trestles, whatever.
Yep.
And then two
clamp rack trestles. You can put your clamps on there.
All right. And then two, like not I-beams, two boxes.
Like torsion boxes.
I said that you can move around, put them together, separate them out.
Yep. And if you check out the article, there's nothing you can't do on that bench that you can do on a traditional bench.
Hand planing?
Mortise?
Hand planing. Anything.
How would you wouldn't
Look
they
at
slide
the
all over the place?
Nope. You're screwing a stop in and hand planing against it.
How would you mortise by hand?
How would you mortise by hand? Same thing. You're gluing or not gluing. You're screwing stops or you're using clamps to just hold the piece down.
I was thinking more when you hand plane the racking that's produced on the not stopping the piece of wood,
Right.
which is
Like
you use a stop,
or
but
the whole bench moving.
yeah, the whole bench.
It doesn't. You can also clamp. I keep thinking that if I point to this,
No,
it's going
they
to
don't
show
see
up on there. Well, we should hook people up with this article too if we can. You can clamp the beams to the horses if you're going to do something that's really going to rack the system. You could put those beams end to end for really long stuff. He shows how to do all of it in the article.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a ton of different variations on this. I mean, the Japanese use a style of bench like this.
Yeah.
Andrew Hunter's benches.
yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The difference is the melamine on the one side, and gluing up
Homosote.
and then the Homosote on the other side, because you can pretty much sand right on that Homosote.
I mean, what Homosote is like fiberboard, like
Yeah,
cardboard.
it's a really soft,
Okay.
and it's cheap. You
I
can
trust
replace
you.
it.
Did you do this article?
I did.
Okay.
It was about 300 degrees that day. He was a really good sport.
All right. Well, MDF bench, go.
Yeah, I say you can use an MDF for a bench top,
Absolutely.
especially if you're eventually going to replace it.
Oh, it was coming.
I think it'll last a long time.
It would last a long
I
time.
think in pre-production, I claim to use an MDF bench for the rest of my life out of spite towards you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fine. Just make something and then start building furniture. You'll figure
Yep.
out what you want in
Yeah.
a bench, and then one day you might make one.
Yep.
A different one. I mean,
One of the things that Josh says in that article that applies to the MDF bench too is that you don't need a bench to make this bench. Same thing with the MDF.
yeah. And as far as sizing the holes to reinforce them, Michael Fortune did an article about using epoxy to reinforce different, like screw threads, etc. And that would show you how to do that. Reinforce for like a dog hole or something, how to reinforce the fibers in there.
Or for hanging a vise.
Or for hanging a vise. Yeah, if you're going to hang a vise, that's right. We talked about this too. If I was going to hang a vise on an MDF top, I think what I would do is actually bolt it instead of screw it.
Through bolts.
Through bolts, yes, because MDF does not hold screws very well. And the best type of screw for that, MDF, is called a conformat screw, but I don't think there's a conformat screw available that I would trust holding a vise, because, the vise is going to be like a cast iron vise, for example, undermounted. It's all that weight is pulling down. So whatever is holding the vise to the MDF has got to be really strong. What are those hanger? What's the kind of bolt screws?
Lag
bolts.
bolt.
I wouldn't trust a lag bolt. So what I would do is counterbore holes in the top. Drill through and then bolt the vise to the bench top.
I like the idea. Is that what Bob Van Dyke has on his? I mean, because that's another article. His MDF bench that he's got like 20 of them at the school, and they take a beating.
Yeah.
So
yeah. There's also, we ran an article by a fellow named Cecil Braden. I think it's Braeden, and it was something like, ultimate plywood workbench or something. But it's a plywood workbench.
Oh yeah.
You know the one I'm talking
yeah,
about?
the legs are plywood.
Everything about it's plywood. So
yeah, it actually looks pretty cool. So all right. Well, let's move on to our all-time favorite tool of all time.
All right.
Anissa?
I went first once. Did you go first yet?
I'll go first. We don't want to pressure Anissa or Ben. So
I went first.
You did. I've been first. All right. So my all-time favorite tool of all time for this week is the DeWalt 611 router in the plunge base, because it comes with a plunge base and a fixed base.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that router with the plunge base, and pretty much now it's the only router I use when I'm not using my router table. I had a Bosch router with a plunge and fixed base, sold that off. I have another big plunge router, which I would love to sell off. And all I ever use is that DeWalt little yellow, the little 1 1/4 horsepower motor. It's got an LED light in the base or in the motor housing.
Nice LED too.
A nice LED, yeah, really good LED. And you can buy these little dust hoods, dust collection hoods for the two bases, and they work really well. Mm-hmm. So I use that I always have the dust collection hooked up to it. The plunging mechanism is smooth. Setting the depth is very easy. Adjusting the depth is great. It has a nice little micro adjustment on the plunge bar, or not the plunge bar, but the depth stop bar rod, I guess. And the handles are comfortable. The on-off switch is in the exact right spot for your thumb or your finger. Everything about it is fantastic. I love that router.
Nice.
It was worth every penny I spent on it.
I got a Makita or something, and that one came out like a month after.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. But I do love my little Makita. That's a great router as well.
Trim router?
Yeah.
I do have another trim. That's not really a trim router, but I do have this old Porter Cable trim router. I think it's called the 310 PC, and they don't make it anymore. But it's like you could throw it at a brick wall, and the brick wall would fall down. It is indestructible, and it's not very sophisticated, but it is awesome.
I don't look for sophistication out of a router.
Well, some
router
things are nice.
In a tuxedo, if you will.
Some things about you do want sophistication in a router in terms of controlling depth of cut and things like that. I know, I got your joke. I got it.
I'm just laughing at that. You do want sophistication in a router.
I do. Okay. You do, especially a plunge router.
Okay.
You don't want a crude, plunge router. You want it to operate smoothly. You want the depth adjustments to be very easy. You want the on-off switch to be either on the handle or within easy reach on the body of the router. And you do want, but in like a trim router, it doesn't have to be as sophisticated.
It just needs to take down a brick wall.
It needs to be able to take down a brick wall. Unfortunately, they don't make that router anymore.
Yeah.
But it's
too many people were complaining about the brick walls.
Yeah.
Too much litigation over the brick walls thing.
All right. I'll go next. To buy Annie some more time to think about hers.
Okay.
I have a new theory that anybody's all-time favorite tool of all time is the tool that they need but don't have right now.
Oh, no, mine's always the tool that I've just been using and did a great job.
Well, okay. So here's my take on it, though. So I work down at the magazine shop most of the time, and I never have brought in a pair of dividers. And we don't have any dividers in the shop. And I don't use them often, but when you need a set of dividers, you need that set of dividers. There's nothing else that really does the job.
Have you just recently needed a set?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know how many times I've needed a pair of dividers? in all the years I've been making furniture.
Yeah.
Yeah, Anissa was right. 0.
You don't use dividers at all?
No. Somebody I shot with recently was using them. Bob Van Dyke in the shaded fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything with a lot of symmetry like that, you're going to lay out with dividers. I had to do a weaving apparatus for one of my wife's looms, and I needed 45 holes that were perfectly spaced, and they had to be perfectly spaced. And if I put 45 marks, that drill bit, that brad point bit was not going to hit that mark perfectly every single time. You punch it in with a set of dividers, you're done. You want to transfer a measurement, grab the dividers, open it up. I'm never pulling out my ruler. I'm just transferring that direct measurement from one piece to another. I don't use them every day, but there are times when I really hate the fact that there's no dividers down at the shop. So I finally brought some in.
I don't always use dividers, but when I do.
They're my favorite.
They're my favorite tool.
Yep. So
You went through all that trouble to exactly locate the center of 45 holes.
Yes.
And then as soon as you drilled the first one, it was screwed up. Because you can't perfectly drill 45 holes. How'd you do that? With a drill press?
By punching a point in the piece with dividers, and then a brad point bit.
And then the bits wandered?
I'm sure that I stacked the odds as much in my favor as humanly possible. You want to break out a set of calipers on there? Yeah,
we are getting the calipers out. We are getting the calipers out after this, in praise of dividers.
You have to get Katie off the loom first.
Right. Yeah.
She's busy right now.
Yeah, she is.
But then he let me screw up the glue up, so.
That was on a different one, but
okay.
you pulled it apart and saved yourself.
I'm going to go with my Powermatic planer with the helical head.
Ooh, you have a helical head.
I do. I knew I was going to like that planer when I got it, but I still haven't changed. You just turn the blades. I still haven't turned them, and I'm not going to say here what's gone through that machine, but it's still
MDF.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, those are segmented cutter heads are pretty freaking awesome.
How wide? 15 with a helical head. Yeah, that's a dream machine right there.
The dream machine. I like that.
Maybe 1% of our audience just started playing Cheap Trick in their head.
Yes. Dream Police.
Yeah. Nice.
I like Cheap Trick.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. Jeff's messing around with stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Let's go on to the next question. All right. This one's going to create arguments. This one's from Theo. I want to treat myself to one of them fancy hand planes to see what all the fuss is about. I currently have a vintage block plane, number 3 and number 5, plus a compass plane, rebate plane, and a spoke shave waiting to be fixed up. What would the most sensible addition to the above planes be? Seeing as this new one will be much more expensive than the others, I want to make sure that this one sees the most use in the shop.
Well, see, that's two different requirements that are in conflict with each other.
Yeah.
I want it to be sensible, but I also want it to be the one that I use the most.
Well, I don't know that that's in
the
conflict.
purchase to be sensible because he's going to use it the most.
No, what's the most sensible addition is what he asks. Which plane would make the most sense to add, but I also want it to be the plane that I use the most. And I think in this case...
Oh.
He already has the planes that he's going to use the most.
Right, yeah. So, because the planes you use the most would be like somewhere like a 4 or a 5. A number 3...
Block plane he has.
Yeah, which you use a lot of. So the most sensible addition in terms of function would be because he does not have a shoulder plane, but he sort of has a rabbit, he has a rabbit plane, which you can use as a shoulder plane. He has a compass plane, so really that's the only plane you need. You don't need anything else. You have a compass plane. You can do everything with a compass plane. That's the most unusable next to a multi-plane.
Wait, no. It's like 3 episodes ago you were arguing with Vic that they were usable, and Vic Teslin was saying it was unusable, and you're like, no, I use mine.
I did use it. I just they're kind of. I mean, what do you use them for? You know, it's like I have used mine though. I think what I would do, you either have to do one of 2 things. You're either going to have to buy a nice plane, and it's not going to be the one that you use all the time, but it makes the most sense to add to this collection that you have. Or 2, you're going to buy a plane that replaces one of the ones you already have. It'll be nice, and you'll use it a lot.
But I'm confused because if he were going to do that, why he has those planes working really well. He's fixed them up and they're working really well. So why duplicate the plane? Just to see what the difference would be between one of those rehabbed planes and a new expensive plane?
Sure. Yeah, so get like a number 4. He doesn't have a number 4. Get a number 4.
Yeah, number 4
I could agree with that.
And then sell the number 3.
Duplication.
Sell the number 3 if you can find someone to buy it, you know, and just have a number 4. I think a number 4 is a little more versatile than a number 3 anyways. A longer body, wider
What about
blade,
a 4.5? Just go even more extreme.
4.5 it's just a specialized smoothing plane. You know, it's like
it's just a wider number 4, isn't it?
It's a wider number 4, but it's heavier. For a number 4 is a better option for a first smoothing plane than a 4.5. Like I have a 4.5, but it has a high angle frog on it, and that's really all I use it for when I get to grain that the 4 can't handle because it's the angle bedding angle is lower. But I mean, don't you all think that that's what he has to do? He has to say, okay, I'm gonna buy a nice plane, but it's gonna be like a nice shoulder plane.
What about like a nice shooting plane?
Yeah, I mean,
because that's something you'd use all the time.
Yeah, that's all I ever use is my shooting plane. I use it for everything. No, that's again a specialized plane. I use it a lot, but you could do that. Yeah, like a Lee Nielsen or a Veritas shooting board plane.
I would either say go big and get a shooting plane, or maybe a low angle jack, because that's something that he doesn't really have.
Yeah, a low angle jack would be nice. Yeah, because you could use that to shoot. You could use it on in-grain. You can use it to smooth. Mm-hmm. You could adjust the angle of the blade and use it as a high-angle smoother. Mm-hmm. So it is a pretty versatile plane you could use a lot.
Matt agreed with me.
I could get behind that, too.
Oh, I thought Anissa suggested the low-angle jack plane. You suggested it, Ben?
This isn't a first, is it? Is it a first?
That we've ever agreed with each other?
Yeah.
We usually intentionally disagree with one another. Yeah, I think that there we go. Why didn't we think of that yesterday when we were talking about this?
I just
because you were too busy disagreeing.
Yes. And I think I was making fun of the number 3.
You were definitely making fun of the number 3, and then I was making fun of you for making fun of the number 3.
Yeah. I think my real problem with the number 3 is that my hands don't really fit on a number 3.
So no one should have them.
That's right. I'm glad you're finally understanding.
I'm getting it now.
How things work.
I'm figuring it out. All right. Well, let's move on to some listener comments.
Ooh.
And these are emails because we've gotten good emails lately. This one's from Bruno. Got the stickers. Thanks so much. P.S. I was a little surprised there was no blue tape used. I did cut myself while opening the envelope, so it was sharp. That one tickled me, so I put it in there. And so everyone, the stickers have gone out. There's like 500 stickers that we sent out. So
did you have to personally label and
Isabella and I did, my intern and I did.
Did y'all lick all of them, or did you get like a moistener?
We used tape.
Oh, you used tape.
Yeah, we should have used blue tape. I should have talked to Bruno in advance. That would have been a really good idea.
Yeah.
So.
That would have been a very good idea.
Yeah.
Bruno, if you're interested in a web producer job, we need someone with good ideas.
Hey,
what?
I'm full of good ideas.
You are full of good ideas. All right, and the next one, Mr. Pekovich.
If I keep telling you that, maybe it'll be true.
You have good ideas, Anissa.
You do, Anissa. You have wonderful ideas all the time.
And we appreciate them. And you.
Why am I having trouble buying into this?
You make valuable contributions to the magazine. And now the podcast.
All right. I recently listened to an episode of Shop Talk Live in the car with my not yet 2-year-old. I came home the other day and found that he had talked his grandmother into letting him cover everything, himself included, with blue tape. What next, I asked. Number 2, pencils and finely crafted white oak furniture all over the house? Thanks, Mike. Thanks. Joel. And then he has a P.S. Since I'm writing, I should add that Anissa did an awesome job as a guest on episode 140. You should find lots of excuses to have her back. She has not been, as far as I can tell, a bad influence on my son. We'll give that time.
Trust
me. Give that one time.
Yeah. I mean, you think it's bad that her son hits her daughter in the head. You should see what she does to him.
No, I was just making that up. The clawing at the door was true. The hitting each other was not.
Jumping on the trampoline with chickens.
They do that.
They do that.
They do that. Those poor chickens.
Do they scream weird things out the window of cars?
They do.
The kids, not the chickens.
Correct.
All right, that's all for this episode. Please spread the word about Shop Talk Live to your woodworking friends and neighbors. Shop Talk Live is dependent on your questions, so make sure to send them into shoptalk@taunton.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please click that thumbs up button. Finally, you can keep up with us with Fine Woodworking on Instagram and on Facebook, and look for all of us on Instagram as well. Thanks for listening, and have fun in the shop.
Sorry. I was coughing.
We know. We're right here.
You're very perceptive.
Thank you.
You did. It's nice how you pick up on
Perceptive and
things.
full of good ideas.
Nice fit.
Think like a hand plane. Oh my God.
That one's been getting rave reviews.
Has it?
Yes.
Wait, where do the remixes go? Just to us, right?
No.
No. He puts them there on the end of the podcast.
No, they're not.
Yes,
Yes.
they are.
No, they're
Yeah, didn't you make one with Anissa?
Yeah.
I thought that was just for us.
Would you think I would spend like an hour to just make? Oh, well, I would, but
Yeah.
Obviously, Anissa listens to a lot of the podcasts.
Yeah. I think Anissa's listened to fewer than I have.
Oh my goodness. I thought that was awesome that you were doing that for us.
it's all about the listeners, Nisa.
Wait. Where do the remixes go? Just to us, right? Right? No, they're not. I thought that was just for us. Yeah. Just for us. Yeah. Just for us. I thought that was awesome that you were doing that for us.